Hello, and welcome to this week's edition of Halftime on the Hudson. I'm Mike Conway, and he's John Rohr. Let's just say we're talking a whole lot about March Madness this show, but first, we'll begin with some hot takes. The New York Giants have had a franchise QB in Eli Manning since he signed on with Big Blue in 2004. But fast forward 2 Super Bowl victories later, and we find the Giants in 2018 coming off one of their worst seasons ever, with a 3-3 record and consequently the number 2 overall pick in the 2018 draft. With Eli Manning planning to return to the helm in New York for 2018, the Giants are facing an interesting scenario. Do they draft a quarterback? With another offensive and defensive position still in question, would a QB draft pick be a good or bad idea for the G-Men? Although Eli Manning has been the man for the job in the last decade, it's time to say goodbye. He would get to leave when he wants after those 2 massive Super Bowl victories, but I think he should wise up, take a look around, play one more season, and go join Peyton in the promotional pizza business, and hey, who knows, maybe even invest in a brewery. Hey Eli, ever heard of Natural Light? I see the New York Giants using the number 2 overall pick in the 2018 draft on either Josh Allen of Wyoming or Josh Rosen of UCLA. Whoever they can get first. Whatever Josh ends up dressing for the Giants, I hope he gets coached by Manning well for a season or 2, and then trades in his headset and clipboard for a helmet and the ball the following season.
With March Madness in full swing and inexperienced teams of talented freshmen getting bounced from the field of 64 like nobody's business, it's time to have a serious conversation about the one-and-done rule. When the rule was first implemented in 2005, it was designed as a way to allow elite athletes to mature before heading to the NBA. Since then, however, it has rocked the college basketball universe with scandal. FBI investigations into academic fraud, strip club recruitment, and alleged bribery, both from head coaches and companies like Adidas, have shifted the focus to anywhere but the court. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver is seemingly in favor of changing the rule, so change is likely coming sooner rather than later. It's time to allow players to enter the draft as soon as they're ready. College basketball can live without the 6 to 8 players a year that would come directly out of high school, and it'll become a lot more competitive with players actually using their time in college to mature. College basketball will be just fine without players like DeAndre Ayton, who could be making millions of dollars in the NBA right now, which would make the $100,000 Sean Miller allegedly wired him look like chump change.
With 9 games remaining, just 2 teams have clinched their spot in the 2017-2018 Stanley Cup playoffs. Not surprisingly, these 2 teams happen to be the Stanley Cup final favorites, the Tampa Bay Lightning in the East and the Nashville Predators in the West. On the one hand, Nashville is the hottest team in the NHL and is in the midst of a 16-game point streak, including 15 wins and 1 overtime loss. Even though their leading point scorer, Victor Arvidsson, only has 55 points, the team is stacked from top to bottom and even has contributions from all parts of the lineup. In the East, the Predators currently have 10 players that have more than 30 points this season. Nashville has done so well that their ex-captain, Mike Fisher, has come out of retirement to shore up the bottom 6 of their lineup. On the other hand, Tampa just may be the most intimidating team in the NHL. They currently have 2 players that rank in the top 6 in the league in points, and Nikita Kucherov, who sits at 1 with 94, and Steven Stamkos, who sits at 6 with 85. At the trade deadline, Tampa picked up J.T. Miller and Ryan McDonough from the Rangers in exchange for center Vladislav Namestnikov and a couple picks and assets. J.T. has fit right in his 10 games with the Bolts, scoring 5 goals and 5 assists for 10 points. Ryan McDonough is able to slide right into the lineup next to his old defensive partner and Dan Girardi after Tampa picked him up following his buyout from the Rangers. From top to bottom, the Bolts look like a formidable team who definitely have a chance at the Cup this year. Stay tuned for more on how the Stanley Cup playoffs play out.
In recent years, the lines separating the NFL season and off-season have become blurred, thanks to what I would like to call mock draft season. While Mel Kiper Jr. and Todd McShay typically get the majority of the picks right by mock draft 42.0, one particular mock draft published by CBS Sports last week caught my eye. It had the Browns trading their first 4 picks, 1, 4, 33, and 35 respectively, to Indianapolis in exchange for quarterback Andrew Luck. After my initial reaction of rolling my eyes, it kind of makes sense. In recent weeks, the Browns have made moves that make them look like a competent franchise. So why not add a proven quarterback to the newly acquired talent? And let's be real, drafting quarterbacks hasn't exactly worked out in Cleveland. On the other hand, the Colts need to almost completely rebuild. In fact, so much rebuilding needs to be done that Josh McDaniels backed out of the head coaching job. First of all, the offensive line is awful, which is why Luck has been plagued by injuries the past few years. And on the rare occasion he does have time to drop back and throw the ball, he doesn't have a whole lot of capable targets down the field. On the other side of the ball, the Colts had the third worst defense in the league last season. All in all, Andrew Luck hasn't yet proven he's the next Peyton Manning or Tom Brady, and no one knows if his shoulder will ever reach 100% again. With the opportunity to have 3 picks in the top 6 of this year's draft, it's time for the Colts to send Andrew Luck to greener pastures. When we return, college basketball reporter Corey Grip will join us in studio to discuss a little bit of everything having to do with March Madness. Stay tuned.
And welcome back. It's the most wonderful time of the year, as you know. And no, not Christmas, March Madness. And this year certainly has been madness. Corey, provide us with some updates and analysis on the tournament so far.
I mean, I'm just really surprised at how, obviously the upsets is pretty much the standard, but I'm really surprised at how the elite players in this tournament have struggled. DeAndre Ayton, Trae Young did not play great, Miles Bridges. So I'm just surprised that all these guys that are going to go pro after this tournament are just not really showing up, and just the little guys, the little schools are really stepping up and providing. And I couldn't be happier with that.
Yeah.
So historically, 1 seeds are 135 and now 1 after the University of Virginia fell to the University of Maryland, Baltimore County the other day. Other than that game, what's your biggest upset so far?
Well, I'm pretty sure most would agree. Arizona, many had them going to the national championship or winning the whole game. They were one of the hottest teams in the country. I really thought them, rallying around the FBI investigation and Sean Miller would take them far. They didn't look good. Their guards couldn't guard Buffalo's guards, and DeAndre Ayton looked completely uninterested at times. He wasn't really demanding the ball. It's just disappointing to see. They didn't look like they wanted to be there, and that's just disappointing considering they dominated the Pac-12 tournament.
It's definitely been one of those classic March Madness tournaments where way too early on in the tournament I find myself ripping up all my brackets. Nothing too good. Texas A&M over UNC was my big upset that really shook me. Number 2 UNC, I had them going way farther, obviously, than losing to Texas A&M. But here we are now in the middle of the madness.
Yeah, I have to agree with Buffalo, Arizona as well. I had Arizona winning it, and my bracket was busted the first day. I think going into it, we were talking about how underseeded Arizona was and all this East Coast bias against the Pac-12. And then Arizona, I guess, basically proved that it was right to be biased towards the East Coast. All right, moving on. Most exciting player to watch this far?
I'm going to say Keenan Evans. I've been really impressed with him. There's been a lot of really good players in this tournament, but he has really carried Texas Tech the last 2 games. He was just making big shots, made some big threes against Florida and Stephen F. Austin. He actually single-handedly carried them over Stephen F. Austin, made some excellent drives. He's really the key playmaker. When he's healthy, they're one of the best teams in the country. He's a very solid defensive player, and they should beat Purdue. And if he continues to play well, they can make a Final Four run.
Yeah, I'm going to have to take Mikal Bridges, though. From Villanova, 25 points against number 9 Alabama, and then 23 against Providence in overtime the game before. Nova's coming out really strong from their district. I like what he's been doing with that team. He's definitely got length. I'd like to see them go far in this for sure.
I'm going to take Jalen Brunson, also on Villanova. He's like a modern-day Aaron Kraft. He's been playing for 150 years. Plays great defense, the best offensive efficiency in the country. And of the players left in the tournament, I trust him with the ball more than anybody else. Moving on, most surprising team in the Sweet 16?
For me personally, it was number 11 Syracuse. They're always that team that's kind of right on the bubble, right on the edge of not being picked for the tournament, not being able to win an automatic bid. And you know what? They got put in the tournament this year, and there was a lot of buzz around them. A lot of people saying, yeah, they deserve it. This is finally their year. And then an equal amount of people saying they don't deserve it. They shouldn't be in the tournament. Number 11 seed. They're in the Sweet 16. Obviously, I feel like they've played well enough to prove their worth for the tournament. Very happy to see them, not only be in the tournament, but do as good as they have.
I'm going to pick Florida State. This team lost 6 of their last 10. It didn't really look good. And I thought a lot of people were definitely jumping on the Michael Porter Jr. bandwagon, thinking Missouri it was just going to beat them, and I know I did. Florida State, they're looking really good. Trent Forrest is starting to really play well. They actually are a lot better defensively than I thought they were. They're really good at shot blocking, grabbing offensive rebounds. You could see their size had a huge advantage against Xavier this past weekend. So I think Gonzaga will be a tougher matchup for them just because they're very similar size-wise. But I think Florida State's depth could take them past Gonzaga, but it'll be a really good game defensively, for sure.
I went with Loyola Chicago. Obviously made it to this stage with 2 big upsets, first over Miami and then over Tennessee. In addition, the team has kind of rallied around 98-year-old Sister Jean. The country's really gotten behind
Love
that.
to see it.
And I think she's America's star. Moving on, most disappointing team.
Number 2, UNC, goes back to my worst upset. That wasn't UMBC. That was really a team that just, is always a huge powerhouse in the tournament. And, we see them in some really exciting games. And for them to go out this early, I think was disappointing to me personally, but also to the fans of the tournament. I love to see a good game where UNC is in the Final Four, even the national championship.
Well, I already covered Arizona, so I'm going to talk about Michigan State. Michigan State, usually they're always ready to play for the tournament. Tom Izzo, one of the best coaches in college basketball. But I think their inability to shoot the three really was their downfall. That's how you have to beat Syracuse with the zone. Because if you can't make threes, you can't beat them, no matter how much size and depth you have. I think that was their biggest weakness, and I felt like if Michigan State played Duke, the winner of that was going to go to the Final Four. But huge disappointment. A lot of people had Michigan State winning the whole thing, at the very least getting the Final Four. It's really disappointing considering they have a very deep team, and they're also still very young. So it'll be interesting to see if they can all come back and make another run next year.
I got to take Virginia here. Obviously, Tony Bennett's a fantastic coach. Virginia did great in the ACC this year, won it pretty impressively. He hasn't yet proven he can win in March. They're yet to do anything. The last several years, they've been one of the favorites every single year and just haven't been able to do it. I think they play slow, boring basketball that works in the regular season, but when it comes to March, it just doesn't get it done. All right, moving on. Final Four predictions.
I'm going to take Duke. I think Duke right now, I think you guys would agree. They got probably the best big man combo in the country. I think defensively their zone is they're playing very, very well with the zone. I don't think Syracuse has the weapons offensively. They haven't been shooting well, and honestly, if Duke scores 60 points, they're going to win that game. I really don't think Kansas is that great either. They'll beat Clemson. I think it'll be a close game. But Kansas, they're very streaky from three, and if Azubuike gets into foul trouble, they have no size. I think Duke has a very clear path to the Final Four if Bagley and Carter continue to dominate.
Me personally, I'm taking Duke 2, Kentucky, Nova, and Texas A&M I've also included in my Final Four. I think Kentucky is going to be out fairly easily. One thing I want to touch upon, obviously, is that their journey to this point has been fairly easy with wins over number 12 Davidson, number 13 Buffalo, who had that upset, and number 9 Kansas State. And they were also seeded fairly low in their own conference tournament. So I think that obviously they have a great history of being in the tournament and being a great competitor. But watch out for them this year to make a quick exit.
Yeah, I think Kentucky's had probably the most historically easy path to the Final Four ever. They played a 12, Davidson, a 13, Buffalo. They're going to play a 9, Kansas State, and the potential to play an 11 or a 7 seed in the Elite Eight. Pretty ridiculous. Overall, I think Villanova has the perfect mix of experience, athleticism, and coaching, and I think they're going to go ahead and get it done this year again.
I honestly like Villanova. Very great, well-coached team, have a lot of depth, a lot of experience. I like Gonzaga, too. They got a lot of players from last year's team that lost the national championship game. I really think that their guard plays, Josh Perkins, doing a really good job. Gonzaga is one of those teams that people really don't think about in March, but they're always making a play for the Sweet 16. I really like Tilly and Jonathan Williams, how they're playing. And Zach Norvell, he's been balling. I mean, he's really been carrying the team offensively. So I expect them to get to the Final Four after beating Michigan. And I also like Kentucky. I mean, their path, obviously it's March Madness. You never know what to expect, right?
Really don't.
We've seen it all this year. So I don't Kentucky can't take their foot off the gas. They're obviously the favorite, but anything can happen.
Yeah, and in the West, there's Michigan. They're always in it at this stage of the year. Always. When you return, Scott Fritsch will continue to give us his take on how to become a fan of the English Premier League. Stay tuned.
Thanks, John and Mike. With all the excitement surrounding the upcoming World Cup, I recently asked myself, why don't I watch soccer more often? In light of this, I wanted to highlight the league in which most World Cup players will be coming from, the English Premier League. I'm here today to present to you all a beginner's guide to choosing an EPL team in order to help a casual sports fan get into soccer. As a result, I'll be comparing the EPL to the NBA as a means of finding similarities between the teams listed there. There's 20 teams in the EPL, however, the infamous Big Six have used money, corruption, and oil in order to gather the most talent. Most of the time, you're born into supporting whatever team is nearest in terms of your location. However, with the EPL, I can now support teams across the pond that have no relevance to geography. Let's start off by comparing Liverpool and the Houston Rockets. If you're a fan of high-scoring games, the Reds are the team for you. Their star player, Mohamed Salah, is truly James Harden-esque, as he scored 4 goals last weekend, bringing his total goals higher than Harry Kane and Lionel Messi combined. If you like excitement, this team is for you. If you're looking for years of patience to finally pay off, then Tottenham is the club for you. Just like the 76ers, they had the patience to develop their team, and not to mention, their star player, Harry Kane, is a beast just like Joel Embiid, except he's not a 7-footer and he doesn't troll people on the internet. For those searching for a team with a storied history, look no further than Manchester United. Just like the Boston Celtics, they have won the most titles in their league's history, making them a safe option for a solid team. Next, if you're looking to get on the bandwagon train, look no further than Chelsea and Man City. Both these teams are similar to the Los Angeles Lakers, as while they may have one of the biggest markets in sports, this year just isn't their year. If you're wondering about a team outside of the Big Six, look for Burnley. Just like the Miami Heat, nobody knows how they managed to stay good. Lastly, if you enjoy having your hopes crushed every season, Arsenal is your squad. Just like the Toronto Raptors, most of the time they're solid, but when it comes to time to crunch time, they choke. Picking a new sports team is like getting married. You better not mess up, or you'll regret it for a long, long time. When we come back, Jacob Young was reporting from McCann Arena about the women's basketball team this postseason. We'll be right back.
The Mariners women's basketball team is prepping for MAC tournament play this week. The team ended the regular season having lost 2 of their last 3 to Quinnipiac and Niagara. But head coach Brian Georges is preparing them like any other week. The Marist women's basketball program is no stranger to playing for conference championships. Head coach Brian Georges secured MAC titles in 9 out of 10 seasons, but the Red Foxes have not gotten back to the national tournament since 2014. Without an opponent to game plan for yet, the team is getting ready for anyone that stands in their path. After a first-round bye, the journey to capturing another championship will begin.
Basically what we're going to do is we're just trying to touch up on some things that we need to work on to try to improve more of, and add a couple wrinkles.
Once again this season, sophomore Rebecca Hand has led the way for the Red Foxes. She is averaging over 16 points in 32 minutes per game. The sharpshooter made 52 consecutive free throws earlier in the season, tying her for 7th in Division I history. To top it off, she was named to the All-Conference First Team just days ago.
Most individual awards are also a reflection of the team. Rebecca's a great shooter, but usually somebody has to give them the ball.
Coach Georges also told me they're game planning for both Manhattan and Iona, whichever team advances to play them on Friday. For now, we're live in McCann Arena. Jacob Young, MCTV.
Thanks, Jacob. Let's go over some games to look out for this upcoming week. This year's edition of the Sweet 16 certainly has some less than expected matchups, but we sure are in for a treat. My game of the week features 2 coaching giants, Coach K and Jim Boeheim, who will square off Friday night when Duke takes on Syracuse in Omaha. Duke this season has been pretty much what you would expect. Grayson Allen is a dirty player. However, Cuse has turned into a Cinderella story. After being the last team in, the Orange have knocked off higher seeds TCU and Michigan State after defeating Arizona State in a play-in game. While Duke, on paper, wins the talent category by quite some margin, if Syracuse's famous 2-3 zone can hold the Blue Devils to less than 60 points, as they've done with their first 3 opponents, they might just have a chance.
My game to watch this week, of course, comes from the NCAA tournament, where number 3 Texas Tech will take on the number 2 Purdue Boilermakers this Friday, March 23rd at 9:57 p.m. This game seems to be the game of the week, simply because it stands out as the most evenly matched game of the Sweet 16. Tech and Purdue have had similar tournament runs with dominant first-round performances and 3-point differentials to make it through to the second round. The linchpin, of course, for who moves on and who goes home will involve Boilermakers big man Isaac Haas, whose elbow injury in the first round left Purdue's hopes up in the air. Haas has not yet been cleared to play, but remains on the court during team practice. On the other side of the court, of course, is Texas Tech guard Keenan Evans, whose 17.8 points per game is a staggering number for Purdue to think about. Evans and the rest of the Red Raiders are backed by the freshman duo of Jarrett Culver and Zaire Smith, who are averaging 11.5 and 11.3 points per game. Both teams are strong offensive units and will surely make for a great finale to this year's Sweet 16. That's all we have this week. He's John War. Of course, I'm Mike Conway. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Stay in school, kids.